just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out.
The View has to be, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television.
Here, let's watch this because it's so funny.
The trial in New York was politically motivated, otherwise have been prosecuted if it was someone else.
Just for clarification, did you mean that the 34-count case in which Donald Trump was found guilty was politically motivated?
I found that when the judicial system gets weaponized and targeted political enemies for political gain, I think that's inappropriate, and I think that degrades our collective trust in this very important institution, whether that's on a Democratic going after a Republican or a Republican going after a Democrat.
All right, everyone, when the number attached creeps into the millions and the words at the center come straight from The View, suddenly the story isn't just politics, it's spectacle. John Fetterman, the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, has taken Sunny Hostin and the producers of The View to court, accusing them of defamation and reputational harm, a sitting lawmaker dragging a talk show into legal battle rare, dramatic, and potentially precedent-setting. So buckle up, what you're about to see comes from real broadcasts. And just as the papers were filed, Joe Rogan stepped in with his own fire.
Now, I think I was the first Democrat saying, hey, though, we need a secure border. It's a significant issue. And if I thought there was any kinds of issues, and I've been very vigilant throughout, I've been actively involved in those.
I don't like the optics of going down to Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring. I mean, Donald Trump will be in Washington. He should have been in Washington already because he should have been transitioning with his team, but he has refused to sign the GSA agreement and wants to go with his own ethics plan. And so that's one of the reasons why he's not in Washington yet. And so I take objection to that. But the one thing that I just want to say is, I want him to stop talking about Greenland. Greenland is not for sale. Like, why is Donald Trump talking about Greenland? You know why he's talking about Greenland? Because it has oil and natural resources some of those resources are unique to China and Russia. And that's what he wants.
The real fans of The View that are like, oh, these ladies are on point. Most of those people can't leave the house. I think the problem with that show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in. And they always bring on a token conservative woman, they yell over her and silence her.
The courtroom filing was thick pages of legal language, but at its core, one accusation: defamation. John Fetterman, senator of Pennsylvania, claims that Sunny Hostin's words on The View weren't just sharp commentary, they crossed into something more damaging. So here we are, a lawsuit with real stakes, a daytime host under fire, and the biggest podcaster in the world pouring gasoline on the flames. If that sounds messy, hit subscribe, and we've only just opened the first chapter.
There are those on the left who feel like you have made a rightward shift recently, going to Mar-a-Lago, joining Truth Social, your positions on issues like immigration, fracking. What do you say to those who are now, in a sense, questioning your commitment to the Democratic Party?
That's just happened not to be true. I've been on record, too, saying I am not going to become a Republican. Although maybe some people might be happy on one side, but I would make a pretty terrible Republican. I can't keep chasing down every last thing that's online because they're just happen not to be true, and just look at my votes. Look at the things that I haven't changed in a way.
For Fetterman, those kinds of quips weren't just jokes. In his lawsuit, he suggests they snowball into a narrative that sticks, reducing serious policy debates into late-morning punchlines. And that's where the tension crackles. Is this just TV doing what TV does, or is a senator right to demand higher stakes?
I have to say, I don't like the optics of him going down to Mar-a-Lago, because I think that's become kind of like, Donald Trump's little palace, and it's like trekking down to Mecca to see the prophet. So I don't like that. I don't, and it feels like he's yucking it up. Problem is, Donald Trump is not normal. And so what used to be normal becomes something that we talk about. I think John Fetterman, frankly, is right, but I hope that does not mean that he won't call out the abuses of power, that he won't criticize him when...
Now, in the courtroom filings, the senator argues that comments like Navarro's weren't just colorful TV, they chipped away at his reputation, branding him less as a legislator and more as a late-morning punchline. For his critics, that vulnerability made him relatable. For him, it was proof he had more at stake than partisan point scoring.
Terrible.
A terrible situation.
Terrible situation.
And to me, they were doing those jobs. And Republicans, even the Republican governor was saying, like, these are good workers, and
Right.
this is not the problem. They aren't eating geese. But I made a commitment. More than anything, I was more worried about being around to be a dad. I mean, I have three young kids, and my wife, she lived through all of this. So at that point, it started. I was in the hospital for about 10 days. And I start to get better and better. The strength started to come back.
Then Rogan rolled the tape. Fetterman warning that politically motivated prosecutions erode trust in America's courts. To Rogan, the irony was too rich. A senator suing a talk show while railing against weaponized justice Botter tailor-made for his podcast. So here we are, a lawsuit with real stakes, a daytime host under fire, and the biggest podcaster in the world pouring gasoline on the flames. If that sounds messy, it's because it is, and we've only just opened the first chapter.
Team reached out saying, hey, and I don't know if this is like a trolling or a hoax, but they extended an invitation. What do you think? I'm like, well, I mean, if they're playing it straight, then I think it's pretty reasonable to have a conversation, inviting me to engage, and I visited it. So maybe some people would be critical of that, but for me, engaging the president, I think when you're in this business, I mean, that's part of the job. Anymore you would criticize Governor Newsom, that received the president there after the fires in California. They are going to find a way to work together. I mean, that's where we are. And I hope maybe you are watching are tired of just like the venom and the hate. And it's like, I'd like more bipartisan kinds of things. And you are going to agree with things, and you're going to disagree on things. And I'm going to pick my fights, and I'm not going to.
The tension inside the studio may have started with Sunny Hostin, but it was never going to end there. Because in today's media cycle, what's said at 11 a.m. on The View doesn't just vanish, it ricochets across podcasts, headlines, and living rooms nationwide. And there's one voice, more than any other, that millions wait to hear when daytime drama collides with politics. Joe Rogan. Stay tuned, because when Rogan takes aim, the fallout usually comes fast.
It's fucking hilarious. It is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
The audience in his podcast room chuckled nervously, but Rogan wasn't just riffing. His tone hardened as he described The View as the show people love to hate, surviving not because of insight, but because of what he called a rabies-infested hen house. The words were sharp, but the metaphor landed. A picture of chaos, feathers flying, noise without reason, broadcast daily to millions.
And then providing a pathway to amnesty, and then you would have voters that would be significantly voting towards the Democrats because they're the people that enabled them to come into the country in the first place and provided them with those services. This is a big fear that people have, and that you're rigging this system, and that this will turn all these states into essentially locked blue like California is.
And that's where the tension peaked. The lawsuit already framed The View as reckless with reputations. Rogan's commentary framed it as reckless with its own credibility.
Well, I'm not really sure if that's what's in play. I think it's really like it's important that we have to have an honest conversation.
But doesn't that seem logical, though? If you have a significant number of people that are being moved into swing states, she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sonny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it and it's nothing
Just
there.
go for it. Yeah,
there's nothing there.
On one side, John Fetterman tried to stay measured, reminding viewers that we have to have an honest conversation, even confessing how often he'd been judged himself. His words were halting, vulnerable, almost like a man weary of the spotlight. On the other side, Rogan wasn't pulling punches. He leaned back, shook his head. In that moment, Rogan wasn't just mocking, he was holding up a mirror, daring his audience to ask, is this still journalism or just theater with feathers flying?
When I was on there, I really had no idea how it was going to land with the audience. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way. And I responded to it in the moment, as I do.
Sunny's very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
You know, that's sort of, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, are just very dull-minded.
The studio lights were blinding, but not everyone looked comfortable beneath them. Rogan once described stepping onto The View like walking into a room with traps already set. No script, no warning, just waiting for someone to throw the first punch. When the ambush came, he laughed. Yet it wasn't joy. It was the kind of laugh that carried a warning, the laugh of someone who knows the game is rigged.
Guy even looks like a pirate. You know, you're bringing guys in that normally wouldn't be there, that are at least willing to listen. And, you know, it is analogous to a pirate ship in the fact that it's coming in and it's disrupting, right? He's changed the thing. They have the power. So, of course, he's dealing with the power that is. He's very clever. He's doing the PR in terms of, okay, I'm listening, I'm curious, etc. But where the rubber hits the road, he's voting Democrat. So he's having his cake and eating it too. That's politics. He's revealing himself to right now being the shrewdest of the Democrats who are in play.
And that's where Fetterman's lawsuit changes the script. It's no longer about whether one senator feels insulted. It's about whether a talk show can turn reputation into raw material for entertainment without ever being held to account. Outside the studio, audiences laughed, shared memes, replayed the most outrageous lines. But inside a courtroom, no one laughs. There, every opinion can become evidence. Every applause line a potential legal liability. The line between free speech and defamation stretches thin, like a thread pulled tight, ready to snap.
So a Democrat that works with Republicans on legislation that actually advances a common sense agenda, then that's going to score another win for PA like he's
the energy industry,
amassing.
by the way, the energy industry in Pennsylvania. Look at that.
Right.
Look at what's going to happen there. And he obviously has a vested interest in making sure that that production happens.
He's been doing essentially what he actually campaigned on early on, immediately after the election. I was like, hey, you know, we have a choice. You know, we can freak out and follow every other thing around, you know, like a cat, you know, with a laser, you know, after everyone. But I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be that Democrat. You know, for me, there's things I'm going to agree with, I'm going to disagree with, but I'm in the business of finding wins for Pennsylvania and for the nation and engaging the president. I think I see that as doing my job.
If Fetterman prevails, it won't just be his victory. It could be the moment that forces television itself to change, where talk shows weigh their words not just for ratings, but for responsibility. So will this lawsuit tighten the leash on television, or will it be brushed aside as just another headline in America's endless culture war? Stay with me, because the fallout from this case may end up being more explosive than the lawsuit itself.
I'm curious what your takeaway was from meeting with him, and what, if you found that there's any specific policy areas you think you can work with him on.
Yeah, well, I think overall it was a positive experience. I mean, he was kind, he was cordial. It wasn't in any kind of theater. It wasn't trying to get your picture taken to kind of put something out on social media. It was just really a conversation. I actually spoke for over an hour. One of the things can we agree on? Well, one of the things that was easy, like the Dreamers. You know, the Dreamers, immigration, that. And Giselle was part of that community, and we both had the opportunity to express that. You know, I would also, you know, I'm on the Ag Committee, and I think protecting the SNAP as well, too.
The air inside the View's studio seemed calm enough. John Fetterman spoke of conversations that were kind and cordial, stressing that politics should still be about finding common ground. He even mentioned immigration, SNAP benefits, and the quiet hour he spent across the table. On camera, his voice was steady, almost disarming. But when the clip hit the airwaves, the reaction outside was anything but calm. Ana Navarro frowned, reminding him that walking into Mar-a-Lago was like trekking to a palace, and, worse, it sent the wrong message. To critics, Fetterman's willingness to meet Trump blurred the lines. Was he defending democracy or giving cover to a man his party labeled a threat?
But overall, it was just a straight up conversation, and I just have a rule. Like, I'm going to engage and have a conversation that's anyone playing it straight, and that's be doing my job again.
You did get a lot of criticism for it from some people who thought you going to Mar-a-Lago gives cover to Trump by creating this illusion that he's amenable to working with Democrats. I didn't love the optics of you going to Mar-a-Lago. He was going to, which is his palace. He was going to be in Washington a week later. But what was your goal?
That's the paradox. One man frames it as doing his job, while the show frames it as betrayal optics. And the lawsuit? It turns that tension into a legal battlefield. Did Sunny cross a line into defamation, or is Fetterman himself guilty of staging optics in the courtroom? The irony wasn't lost on viewers. The senator who called for dialogue was now suing over words.
Do you think that is helpful, and do you think there should also be some soul searching on the Republican side who need to analyze why they would nominate a convicted felon who ran on lies, threats of retribution, and concepts of a plan?
I haven't spent any of my time after the election freaking out or just, thinking about, here's where we are. And I would like to remind everybody that that's the way democracy works. I was warning people that before the election that, you have the risk. If Trump wins, then he's going to get the House, he's going to have the Senate. And now you have the Supreme Court with a strong conservative slant now, too.
The irony is hard to miss. On The View, Sunny Hostin framed it as soul-searching for Republicans. Why would they rally behind a convicted felon? Fetterman, in turn, countered with talk of democracy, of living with outcomes whether you like them or not. Later, when pressed about Hunter Biden and Trump, he doubled down. Both cases were politically weaponized. Both showed institutions bending under partisan pressure.
Senator, President Biden's decision to pardon his son Hunter is facing bipartisan backlash. Even the Democrats are all over it. But what do you think? Is this much ado about nothing? It is his son, after all, and people do have sympathy for that. But a lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh, well, I think it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated. But I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate. And I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases. And we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
And that's exactly why his lawsuit now feels bigger than one insult. For some, it's proof that Sunny Hostin crossed a line, that commentary turned into character damage. For others, it looks like Fetterman himself is overreacting, using the courts as a shield against the very scrutiny every public figure faces.
I'm just having this is going to be the president. And I am not just the senator for Democrats in Pennsylvania. I'm the senator for everyone in Pennsylvania. And my state picked Donald Trump as president. And if I have the opportunity to have that conversation, and I bet we're going to find things to work together for a better Pennsylvania and a better nation, and that's why I'm engaging in this.
He's taking a lot of heat, apparently, for taking the trip, but do you think his reasons are sound?
It's the most common sense answer I've ever heard. Like, he's a senator to an entire state, and his state happened to turn for Donald Trump. So more than half of that state voted for the person that's becoming president. You're a senator heading into 13 hearings of confirmation he's making. Yeah. Your job on paper is to advise and consent. That's all we ask, and that's what he's doing.
In the end, this isn't just Fetterman versus The View. It's a debate about media ethics, public responsibility, and the thin line between free speech and defamation. Fetterman says he serves all of Pennsylvania, and that duty means engaging, even when it sparks controversy. But his lawsuit forces a bigger question. When does commentary cross into damage, and who decides where that line is? Maybe that's the real takeaway. This case is less about one senator or one host, and more about how America will draw the boundaries between conversation and accountability in the years ahead. This video features commentary based on publicly aired segments from Joe Rogan and verified media coverage involving John Fetterman, Sunny Hostin, and related news events. All references are drawn from public sources. No private or speculative information is included. The content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and fair use policy intended for commentary, critique, and analysis. And if this perspective gave you something new to think about, make sure to subscribe. The next twist may come sooner than you think. Thanks for watching.